What's good, everyone, and welcome back to another reaction video. Today we're reacting to extreme stories of revenge that went too far. To put into summary, this type of scenario is when you want to get a bit of payback, but it goes way too far than you're comfortable with, or other people would think one's revenge should go. An example being, you just wanted a bit of payback for like this one person not giving you back your car. So in retrospect, you steal their car, but when you steal their car, you automatically like send it all the way to the junkyard and it gets crushed and destroyed when it was supposed to be like a trade and whatnot. That would be a complicated, weirdly put way of going things too far, I guess. Would it? I think that is. Anyway, other than that, be sure to give this reaction video a like. uh wow, I'm off my game today. Hit the like button if you enjoyed this reaction video. Hit the subscribe button to support the channel, support the content provided, and so on and so forth. Hit the notification button to be notified immediately when a new video comes out. And if you have any videos you would like to recommend that I should react to, put it down in the comment section below and I'll react to it as soon as possible. And finally, the link to this video will be down in the description below, so be sure to give BMA some love and support for the video that they made that I'm reacting to at this very moment. So yeah, with this all said, be sure to do that, or if you want to check out the original video, go check out the original video. If you want to check out the original video before I react to it, go ahead, do that, or whatnot. If just go ahead and check out the original video if you want to check it out. So with this all said, let's start this video.
Ah, revenge. There's nothing like the feeling of getting your own back, or hearing stories of terrible people who got their just desserts. However, some people have taken their revenge plots way too far, but in a way I just can't get enough of. From cheaters who
Huh?
had their lives completely ruined to immortalizing the deed with tattoos, there are even more stories of people who conducted some nuclear-level revenge. On a high.
Huh?
Now, in the last few videos of this series, I asked you guys to send me in your own revenge stories, and boy, did you guys have a lot of stories. And while they were all pretty good, a few were on another level, like this one that came from Tracy in the UK. Her
Hmm?
husband, Gary, is employed at a local steelworks, and one of his workmates, who we'll call Derek, enjoyed playing pranks. Like, really enjoyed it. He'd superglue cups to tables, put hot sauce or salt in people's drinks while they weren't
Ew.
looking, fill their safety boots with mud, pretty juvenile stuff.
I mean, I guess a bit of payback for these types of pranks is a thing, but what what kind of revenge prank did this guy do on him that would been considered too far?
But then one day he lined the inside of Gary's safety helmet with glue. So when he went to take it off, he couldn't. Eventually, Gary ended up having to cut his hair to get the helmet off, leaving him with no option but to shave the rest of his head. That was the last straw. Gary
That's
thought
fucked
long
up.
and hard about how to get Derek back, but there were only two things Derek really loved: pulling pranks and his motorbike. He loved that motorbike so much it was his pride and joy, and he rode it to work every single day. And that's when Gary came up with an ingenious scheme. That Friday, he approached one of the site's crane operators, another man who's all too familiar with Derek's pranks, and asked him for a favor. Would he use the crane to pick up Derek's bike and leave it on top of their building? The crane operator happily agreed to, no questions asked. When the end of the day came around, the crane operators made a swift exit before Derek came out to the parking lot and saw his precious bike had vanished. At first he thought it had been stolen, and it was only when he saw his workmates pointing and laughing at the bike on the roof that he figured out what had happened. But because all the crane operators had already left, there was no way to get it down, and he had to spend the entire weekend without his precious motorbike, racking up expensive taxi fares to get around. When he came in the following Monday, he was fuming, petulantly demanding someone get it down and pay for all his taxi fares. But
Okay, one, this guy was being a complete a-hole to everyone. I mean, adding a bit of salt and a little hot sauce here and there to someone's drink, act super gluing a cup to a table, yeah. I mean, as long as it's not permanent and whatnot, yeah, that's fine. I mean, you can get a new thing of coffee and can easily remove the glue and get a straw and whatnot. The mud thing, it seemed childish. I'll admit that some people deserve some payback there, but I mean, it's not like there isn't a way to get to the top of the building. I mean, you just need to ask a favor and bam. This was like the literal unprofessional way to ask for help to get it down. I mean, coming in demanding that someone pays their fare. I mean, you've been pranking everyone in the whole company, and when someone decides to prank you back, you don't like it? That's really hypocritical here. Very
Unimpressed by
hypocritical.
his antics, the crane operators refused and left it up there. He begged them, pleaded with them, but apparently it's still up there. Well, when it's eventually brought down, I don't imagine Derek will be keen to start pranking again. Don't I do it?
I mean, that wasn't too far of a revenge prank. Actually, that seems a bit tame and mundane, if mundane is the correct word to use here. Maybe. So don't I do it? What?
In Western weddings, traditionally, the father of the bride pays for everything. However, the father of the bride in this next story, sent in to me by a viewer called Paul, paid for more than he ever bargained for. Paul's ex-army buddy, who I'll call Pete, was about to be married, mainly because his would-be father-in-law had obsessively pestered him about making an honest woman of his daughter. Pete's fiancée, Rebecca, had some expensive wedding plans, and her father was happy to pay for it all. However, during her bachelorette party, Rebecca drunkenly admitted to her friends that she'd cheated on Pete, and not just once, but more times than she could remember. News of this eventually reached Paul, and like a good friend, he immediately told Pete what he'd heard. He was expecting Pete to have a major reaction to this, but he started laughing. It turned out Pete had suspected Rebecca of being unfaithful for a while and had hired a private investigator to follow her. The truth, he assured Paul, would all come out in good time. The wedding eventually
Oh,
rolled around.
that. Wow. Wow, that's actually impressive. Impressive. So you did this whole thing to make them waste money. Okay. I guess that's a one way of getting revenge, a little more extreme than the previous one, but this woman actually cheated on you multiple times with different people maybe. Oh wow. That that might piss you off enough to go to the extreme. Never mind. I was gonna say it's not really a good thing to do, but then I realized if I was put in this situation, I feel pretty pissed off. I might just ignore how extreme it might be for one's paying tax dollars and whatnot, and bam, just do it.
And the bride and groom were placing rings on each other's fingers, but when Rebecca said, "I do," Pete replied, "I don't." He then turned to the hundreds of guests and asked them all to look under their seats. There, they all found packets containing photos of Rebecca smooching other men. While everyone was gasping and shouting at Rebecca, Pete and his groomsmen, who were all in on the plot, grabbed several bottles of champagne from the bar and slipped out. With military precision, they made a beeline for Pete's family home, quickly removing all of Rebecca's possessions and dumping them in the yard before changing the locks. Well, I guess he technically did make an honest woman of her, in that he showed everyone she was honestly a cheater. Do you have a revenge story which you think can top that? Well, you can send it to me at revenge@beamazed.com. You might make it into the next part of the series. All right, what's next?
I don't really have any revenge stories, to be honest. The people I keep myself around are either people that A, are good friends, or B, they were good friends, but they end up doing something to members of my family, or I don't know, being really, really weird.
Deep water.
That's it, really.
Landlords. Some are good, some are bad, and some are just plain evil. But if you've ever had to live under a bad landlord, A story from 14
Huh.
years ago belonging to a now deleted Reddit user, who I'll call Angela, might make all that rent money feel well spent. Back in the day, Angela rented a flat which was owned by a cheapskate landlord. He'd skimp on repairs, paint over mold, raise rents whenever he could. You know, typical scumbag species of landlord. After raising the rent for the third time in a single year, Angela decided to move out. On the last day of her lease, she'd cleaned up and removed the last of her belongings by 1 p.m. However, the landlord had told her to be out of the apartment by noon and used this as grounds to keep her entire security deposit, some $1,200.
The
Angela was
frick?
seething, but instead of fighting him on it, she decided to bide her time. 6 months later, in the dead of night, Angela dropped by her old apartment building. Without anyone around, she located an outdoor faucet that she'd seen a few times on a set of stairs leading to the building's basement, and turned it on. Water began pouring down the steps and into the basement, a room that was off limits to residents as the landlord claimed he was using it for his own personal storage, namely for electronics and supplies for another business he ran. Then Angela simply walked off. She moseyed
What is
past the
that?
building a few days later and noticed that the faucet was still on, a deep pool of water now swamping the door. Clearly, the landlord hadn't been around in a while because his basement storage room was completely flooded, undoubtedly ruining everything, including tens of thousands of dollars worth of electronics he had stored down there. Gee, I wonder if he skimped out on those repairs. Let it go. They say revenge is a dish best served cold.
Okay, that landlord actually deserved that kind of over the top revenge. No matter what. I mean, seriously? That kind of bull crap? Mm-mm. Nope. Wouldn't actually want to deal with that kind of guy. I probably would have left during the second he did the second one, and before he did a third one, I would be prepared to leave the next day at noon.
But I'd argue it's best served frozen, if Reddit
Huh?
user A Quiet Borderline's uncle's story is anything to go by. Uncle Dale was a senior engineer at a small firm in the U.S., and while not in his job description, he was also the one who organized the office parties. He left a tin box with a slit in the top outside of his office, which people could leave money in to donate to the firm's party fund. He'd seen plenty of coworkers popping bills into it, but when he checked the box one month, it was empty. Someone had stolen the donations. But this engineer preferred to solve problems rather than just report them. So he came up with a plan. He secretly rigged the box up to a hidden doorbell camera, then loudly announced someone had been kind enough to donate $100 to the party fund. A few minutes later, the doorbell camera app pinged on his phone. The footage showed Brad, the owner's nephew who had also worked at the firm, sneaking up to the box and opening it before realizing there was nothing inside it and guiltily slinking away. Dale could have sent the incriminating footage to the owner, but no. Dave knew the footage didn't actually prove anything, and he wanted to teach this Nepo baby a lesson he'd never forget. So, Dale asked some of the firm's engineering students to create a box that, when opened, would play the loudest, most obnoxious noise possible. They quickly put together a box that not only blared the popular Disney song Let It Go from the film Frozen at full volume when opened, but they also made sure it wouldn't stop until the lid was closed, and you could only do that by hitting a hidden switch at the back. Dale then proudly glued the box down to the table with industrial strength glue, shut the lid, and then loudly announced that someone had kindly donated $50 before walking away. A short while later, the deafening tune from Frozen suddenly blared through the office, and people gathered to see what was up. Everyone, including Brad's uncle, came to look and watch as Brad was desperately trying to close the box lid, but to no avail. The thief had been caught red-handed and in full view of the boss. 15 minutes later, Brad had packed up all of his things and been kicked out of the office. His uncle had also left a note in his file stating, "Do not rehire, do not recommend." So, just like that, this Nepo baby's easy career path, along with any hopes he'd ever become an engineer, were over. If only he'd let it go.
Okay, I'll admit that was a good pun at the end there. But damn, that's not really an extreme story of revenge that went too far, in all honesty. That seems like a normal thing of revenge. I mean, you got a guy who's literally stealing from a box. A box that, like, is meant for, like, parties for the company and whatnot. Like, all that money could have been used to make, like, a big dinner plan or whatever. And this guy just decides to go up and steal from everyone that kindly donated a bit of money here and there so that it could all be possible. People's hard working money. What the hell?
The early bird. In my opinion, the worst kind of thieves are food thieves. Luckily, another person who wrote in, called
Hmm.
Verika, enacted revenge on a food thief that was so vile, she made sure they'd never touch her snacks again.
That's
Back when
gross.
Verika was a student, she shared accommodation with another student called Sophie.
That image that was just shown about that lady picking pieces from a cake while looking like she was decorating it and whatnot, that's gross. Especially since she did it with her hand.
Who, it turned out, didn't understand basic manners. Verika had spent an afternoon baking cookies, but as they were cooling, Sophie snaffled the entire tray and went to eat them in her room. When Verika only found crumbs were left, she was furious. And annoyingly, this would happen often, with most of Verika's baking ending up being sneakily gobbled down by her greedy roommate. Verika told her to stop, but Sophie repeatedly ignored her. So, Verika decided to do something she wouldn't be able to ignore. She made another batch of cookies, only this time she added huge fistfuls of dried mealworms into the dough. Oh, gross.
Ew.
Doubly gross for Sophie, though, because she was a strict vegetarian. Verika then baked them and, as per usual, left them out to cool. And right on cue, Sophie came in, snatched up the whole plate, and disappeared into her room. It was only when she was down to the last few cookies that Verika marched into her room and told her she'd actually eaten close to a half a pound of mealworms. Sophie's face dropped, and she started screaming. She ran to the bathroom, and all Verika heard for the next few hours were the sounds of retching and heaving. Eventually, Sophie emerged, and her entire face was bloodshot from puking so hard. Verika's baked goods never went missing after that. Spider Hider.
That's fair. That's fair. If they don't listen to reason and they're gonna keep doing it, you either move or teach them a lesson. That if you're gonna keep doing this kind of bull crap, I'm gonna make you suffer for it. I mean, I would. I mean, if her only problem is the fact that she is likes to steal sweets, that's the thing that can be solved with a bit tampering. I try to do that sound, but yeah. But yeah, I feel like that was more warranted, and it wasn't too extreme.
Alright, if there are any arachnophobes out there, I suggest you skip ahead to the next story, because this one that was sent in from Wild Bill will send shivers up your spine.
I mean, I don't have a problem with spiders, but if you put a tarantula next to me, I'm gonna be freaking out. Because spiders is one thing, poisonous, deadly spiders that can kill you with a single touch and all that. Yeah, hell no.
Many years ago, when Bill was just 10, his older sister spilled a glass of milk all over a carpet in their house, and then blamed Bill for it. Despite his protests, Bill was punished by his mom, and then all the family put the incident behind them. All of them except Bill, that was. One day he was at the local arcade, and after winning a whole bunch of tickets, he saw in exchange for a single ticket, he could get a cheap plastic spider toy. Suddenly, a brilliant revenge plot came to mind. For 2 weeks, he visited the arcade and traded all his tickets for as many fake spiders as possible. By the end, he had hundreds of the things and began hiding them all over his house. Now, this sounds pretty harmless, but both Bill's sister and mother were severe arachnophobes. Not just a bit
Oh,
scared of spiders,
oh.
but mortally afraid. So whenever either of them found one of the plastic arachnids, they'd scream and shriek like there was no tomorrow. Bill's reign of terror continued for several weeks, and he hid these things everywhere in their beds, in their clothes, their food cupboards. After a few weeks, his sister got used to the pranks, merely calling her brother stupid whenever she found another one. And that's when he enacted the final part of his plan. The entire time he'd been pranking his mom and sister, he'd secretly been catching a whole bunch of real spiders and kept them in a jar. And now it was time to release them. All over his sister's bed. After the jar was empty, he went downstairs, turned on the TV, and waited. He heard his sister walk into a room, and it wasn't long before she yelled down, "God, you're so immature." Bill could only assume that what happened next was she went to remove the spiders on her bed, thinking they were plastic, when she suddenly realized they were all real. She screamed so loud their mom ran upstairs, thinking something serious had happened. Moments later, both Bill's mom and sister were shrieking like banshees and ran out of the house. Bill took his sweet, sweet time removing the remaining spiders from the bed. But even once they were all gone, it's easy to imagine how paranoid his sister must have been every time she climbed into that bed. All that over some spilled milk. Tattoo fall.
Okay, I'll admit that one is, yeah. That was actually a little too far. I mean, you could have literally done anything else. I honestly don't like hitting at the phobia part unless someone really deserved it, but it was only over spilled milk. There was like 100 of other ways to do that. Like, you literally could have put some spilt milk or water on the floor in her room and literally just told one of your parents about it and that your sister would get in trouble. Literally, that would have been like even Steven and all that.
Now, I love a good prank, but the pranks couples can play on each other are elite. Playing a prank on your partner is funny for reasons I just cannot explain. For example, one woman in the UK pranked her partner in 2019 by giving him a bad haircut. They both found it funny as they'd been pranking each other like this for over 20 years, and it grew
Huh.
back in a couple of weeks, so no harm, no foul. However, her partner really wanted to get his own back, but not by cutting her hair or doing anything to her at all. No, instead, he decided to get a picture of her. Not a nice one, an unflattering one where she was asleep. Okay, pretty funny, but he wasn't done there. Oh no. Because then he got that unflattering picture tattooed on himself, really bringing out all the details. Okay, now that is commitment to the venge. At first, his
Huh.
wife was absolutely furious, but eventually came around to see the funny side of it. Man, how do you reckon she's going to top that? Let me know down in the comments.
The only thing I have to admit to when it comes to that, this guy is committed, 100% committed. But I feel like this was a bit of a backfire because now that thing's permanently attached to his body. And if you're gonna get a tattoo, you gotta make sure it's something you want forever on your body for sure, and whatnot, and so on. Because if it's like then yeah, no.
Way tattoo far. Getting a tattoo as a form of revenge is a hilarious, albeit permanent, way to go about it. But sometimes
True.
it really gets the message across, as TikTok user Modern Day Angel knows all too well. Being covered head to toe in tattoos, he would occasionally attract pretty mean comments from other TikTok users, like this particularly nasty one from a user called Max. But we all know the golden rule. On the internet, never feed the trolls. At first, Modern Day Angel looked like he was going to let it slide. However, Max had left his Facebook account linked to his TikTok, and Modern Day Angel found a post Max had written dedicated to the passing of his father. So, Modern Day Angel did what any rational man seeking revenge on a silly little troll would do. He got the picture of Max's dad tattooed on his thigh next to the Grim Reaper. That is a level of disrespect I didn't even know existed. Guess Max's dad is with the Angels now. Well, a modern day angel at least.
The fuck?
Revenge.
Okay, wow. That's honestly fucked up. What the hell? That's oh, okay. Hmm. That I I do not know how to process that, in all honesty. That is, wow. I would be offended, in all honesty, if someone actually decided to do that to one of my relatives, especially a close one. That's all types of messed up.
Revenge fail. Now, I usually cover stories of nuclear revenge that succeed, but I want to talk about one which backfired so badly it made major news headlines all over the world. David and Ina Steiner, a couple who live in the U.S. state of Massachusetts, own a blog called E-Commerce Bites and regularly publish articles on e-commerce news. Back in 2019, Ina published a story on the blog covering a lawsuit being brought against the auction site eBay, criticizing the company heavily. Now, you'd think eBay, being a major corporation, would barely take notice of one relatively small blog, but it did. So much so that eBay's CEO at the time, yes, the actual CEO of a $22 billion company, David Wenig, instructed his staff to take the Steiners down. Soon, the Steiners began receiving things they'd never ordered, and not nice things. There was a funeral wreath, a book on how to deal with the loss of a spouse, a grisly pig mask, $70 worth of weird pizza, and even live spiders and cockroaches. But that wasn't all. The eBay executives bombarded the couple with hate from fake social media accounts, sent them threats, and even physically stalked them, going as far as trying to plant GPS trackers on their car. Well, this is revenge overkill even by my standards. Now,
Damn.
what were they expecting to happen? Well, it turns out this was all part of what the executives called a white knight strategy. When the Steiners eventually contacted eBay about all the hate they were receiving in relation to their coverage of eBay, eBay responded that they'd officially helped the couple tackle these crazy stalkers, manipulating them into running good coverage of eBay, even though they were the ones harassing them. So, what was their undoing? The pizza. Yeah,
Huh?
believe it or not, after police began investigating this cyber stalking, they discovered a gift card was used to pay for the pizzas which had been bought in Silicon Valley, just a few miles from the eBay headquarters. A rental car also spotted following the couple had a license plate that was tracked back to the same area. It was at this point that the police got the FBI and eBay's own lawyers involved, which the executives hadn't expected. They matched all the fake social media accounts, threatening parcel deliveries, and stalking to some of eBay's safety and security unit. Oh, the irony, because none of them had been smart enough to
Damn.
think that it would ever actually be traced back to them. By November 2022, 7 employees were sentenced collectively to more than 100 months of prison time for their roles
Holy.
in this crazy plot. However, CEO David Wenig stepped down as CEO in September 2019 and was not charged. So remember, kids, if you're gonna try and enact a complicated revenge plot, just make sure you have a bunch of minions take the fall.
That you kind of lost me a bit there. That was freaking complicated as frick. Why did it need to be that complicated? Revenge is literally something that does not need to go too deep. Sure, the calculations on how to perform it, yes, but the plan shouldn't be so complicated that you need like a complete spy unit just to do it. And I mean like spy unit as a whole group and spies, like information gatherers, and the whole thing. This is like wow. And to be caught
Pins
by
and
pizza.
needles.
Hmm.
While some acts of revenge take time and patience to plan out, spur of the moment revenge can be just as effective, as Reddit user Rotten Mongrel, who I'll call Mike, once proved. When Mike was in grade school, he usually kept a bag of chips in the side pocket of his backpack. The only problem was another kid, who I'll call Dave, noticed this, and Dave was a major douchebag. He would quietly walk over and punch Mike right where his chip pocket was, destroying the chips and bursting the bag, leaving a mess for Mike to clean up. For 5 days in a row, Dave did this any chance he got, and Mike was powerless to stop him. Or at least, until he got a wicked idea. He turned up to school the following week, and right on cue, Dave punched the backpack pocket as hard as he could. But when his fist hit the bag, he suddenly jumped backwards, screaming in agony. His hand was mangled, and he was rushed to the nurse's office. It turned out Mike had emptied the chips from the pocket and replaced them with sewing needles. Oh man, that's sadistic. Realizing he'd get in trouble for hitting a fellow student, Dave didn't tell anyone what had really happened, but he stayed away from Mike from then on. Finally, Dave could eat his chips in peace, and all it took was some light mutilation. Shrimply the
Mm.
best.
I mean, that's a good way to go about it. Actually, kind of proved the point that sometimes you don't need a bit of time to make like a complicated plan, or just need time to perfect a well thought out revenge plan. That honestly proved that a spur of the moment revenge is all you need. Nothing too complicated, just something plain, simple, and doesn't take a lot of time to do.
Have you ever been cheated on? Trust me, it
Yeah.
sucks. But it's also why this story of
No, no, I haven't been cheated on. I mean, I don't think so. Now I feel bad. And for
revenge
the
from a now deleted Reddit user makes me feel all warm and fuzzy inside. Back in 2022, this woman, who we'll call Beth, was living happily with her boyfriend, who we'll call John, of 4 years in an apartment he owned in London in the UK.
that's
She'd been
not
studying
bad.
really hard to get her master's degree, and for a few months, she'd been spending every waking moment on her thesis. So initially, she didn't notice when
Fair.
John would come home later than expected or began spending more time out of the apartment. Then one day, after she'd finally finished, she decided to book them both a little vacation as a treat. She logged onto her account for a hotel chain she regularly used and suddenly noticed there were several bookings for a hotel in London that she hadn't made, one of which was booked for that very day. She quickly rang up the concierge and asked what was going on. Confused, they informed her that two people had just checked in with her booking, except she was at home. They quickly confirmed the details of who'd checked in, and lo and behold, it turned out John had booked the room through her account, apparently thinking Beth wouldn't notice. The
Huh?
concierge, concerned about potential identity fraud, revealed he'd checked in with another woman. And yeah, it was clear John was cheating on her, and if the multiple room bookings were anything to go by, he'd been doing so for a while. Beth was instantly heartbroken, but kept her cool on the phone. She casually lied that she had in fact made the booking and hung up. When John returned that evening, Beth was her regular affectionate self, giving away nothing of what she actually knew. Over the next few weeks, she began slowly packing her stuff up into boxes, saying she was just doing some spring cleaning and reorganizing. John didn't suspect a thing and continued on with his affair none the wiser. Beth knew he was going on a business trip and spent the coming weeks securing a new apartment, renting movers, and telling all her friends what had happened, but asked them not to reveal anything to John. She also told their downstairs neighbors what John had done, and, disgusted by his behavior, they vowed to help her however they could. After she'd moved the last of her stuff out, she bought 25 packets of fresh prawns and proceeded
Prawns.
to hide all.
What are prawns? I never prawns. Prawns are small. Oh, okay. They're like shrimp. Oh, okay, okay. That okay. I understand now. Okay. So what's so bad about them?
All of them under carpets, in curtain poles, down radiator slots, and even glued them to the hot water pipes around the apartment. She then
Oh,
locked the door, said goodbye to the neighbors, and left. When he returned a week later, he suddenly found his keys wouldn't open the front door. The night before he'd left, Beth had secretly filed down the teeth of his keys so they wouldn't fit in the lock. When he asked his neighbors for the spare keys, they claimed he'd never actually left a set with them. He had, they just didn't want to help him. Confused, he tried to ring Beth, but his calls went straight to her voicemail. So, to get to his apartment, he now needed an expensive emergency locksmith. After several hours, he finally stepped into his apartment and was hit by a wave of week-old, rotten seafood stink. He rang all of his friends, none of whom would pick up, and then once again desperately tried to reach Beth, calling and messaging, demanding to know what was happening. She simply messaged back, "Maybe you can get a hotel," before blocking him. That's pretty
damn.
savage, but it didn't end there. A few months later, the downstairs neighbors rang Beth, sounding very excited. They said since she'd moved out, John hadn't been able to afford the mortgage repayments on his own and was being forced to sell the property. She asked why he hadn't just moved his new girlfriend in, and they said they think it was because the source of the fish stink still hadn't been found. So, with no one wanting to live there with him, he was forced to sell at a pitiful asking price, losing at least £40,000. Man, do I love a happy ending. Which of these stories was your favorite?
The last one. The last one. It was clever. It was well thought out. It was well executed, and I honestly have to say that one, the last one's my favorite. She was calm, collective, let nothing slip, was being a freaking savage. I am never doing that again. I am promising myself I probably will never do that again. Because that just sounded a bit sped to me. Also, I am surprised I was able to snap that much because I don't snap my fingers a lot. I honestly thought I forgot how to snap my finger. Okay, anyway. But yeah, the last one was my favorite. And I have to say that my least favorite overall of the bunch. Have to say. Probably the Let Go. It was like the most underwhelmed one, and honestly doesn't really fit into the revenge that went too far. Honestly, the guy just stole from people in the company that were saving up for a party, and honestly, that just feels more of a thing to get revenge on. And the way everything happened, it was actually just really casual. I mean, he went to confirm that it was someone that did it on repeat. So yeah, nothing wrong with that. Other than that, tell me what you think was your favorite revenge here, and which one did you feel like was the least underwhelming? Like the revenge that was not lame, but like on a scale from 1 to 10, where and if it's like the lowest of the bunch, where what revenge here was the lowest on the scale from 1 to 10 to you? I would like to hear your opinion in the comment section below, so go ahead and do that. Other than that, if you enjoyed this reaction video, like I said in the beginning, hit the like button down below, hit the subscribe button to support the channel, support the content provided, and so on and so forth. Hit the notification button to be notified immediately when videos like this come out. And yeah, be sure to give BMA some love and support for the video they made that I reacted to. And yeah, with this all said, hope you all enjoy, and I'll see you all next time. Bye!